right, Ultán, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. First of all, I believe it's my first podcast piece. I've done a few video pieces on YouTube, but it's a pleasure to make my podcast debut here. And thanks for hosting me and giving me the opportunity. I'm delighted to chat about the game and give some insights from Dortmund and hopefully hear a few about Ulsan too.
A pleasure, yeah. Thank you very much. Well, obviously the tournament's crept past the sort of match day 2 point now. We're heading towards the last match days before we head into the knockout rounds. Dortmund have done all right, a win and a draw. What have you sort of made of their sort of performances in these first 2 games? Bit of a surprise result against Fluminense, but then that epic sort of 7-goal thriller against Sundowns.
Yeah, that game was it was the first one against Fluminense in particular was quite unusual. For me personally, I think a lot of it has to do with the time of years that certain teams and leagues are playing. I mean, Dortmund and a lot of other European clubs are coming off the back of long seasons, and they're only kind of getting back into the rhythm of picking up the pace again. Whereas, as far as I'm aware, the Fluminense and the Brazilian league is kind of in the middle. I think they're about 11 or 12 games in. They looked really sharp. They looked on the ball, and they're fast, aggressive. That kind of typical kind of South American grit that you might see in a lot of their teams, and they really just kind of bullied Dortmund off the park. Dortmund looked very kind of out of shape, I thought, but it was a physical game, very skillful side, and I thought at times Dortmund looked quite one-dimensional. Aside from Kobel's brilliance between the sticks and a couple of good defensive efforts from the likes of Waldemar Anton and Svensson, other than that, there wasn't a whole pile to talk about, to be honest. And with the Mamelodi game, yeah, that was an interesting one. I mean, 4-3, I don't think it gets any more typical than Dortmund. I can't think of too many games now where there's been less than 2 or 3 goals at least. Yeah, it was a very hot day. As far as I know, it was the middle of the day over there, evening time in Germany for people watching. And it was just a tough game, but very open, very fluid, and a couple of good goals, a couple of scrappy goals conceded, a bit of a mixed bag. And as you say, kind of a 6 out of 10 performance so far across the board.
What have you made of the tournament just in general? There's been some interesting quirks with the individual player announcements and runouts and that kind of stuff. What have you thought about the quality of the football in general? Obviously, like you said, it's been come at different points in the seasons for all these different teams. It might be a little bit of a, for the European teams, a long season that might not bring the best performances. But what have you thought just in general?
Yeah, in short, I suppose maybe this might come from kind of a general German mindset of thinking about games and this kind of competition, but without going into the politics too much, I don't particularly agree with the competition. I think it's a bit of a money-making racket from FIFA to some extent, and taking advantage of players. Don't get me wrong, who are paid more than enough, but are also being tested beyond their limits when it comes to playing games. However, I always try and take a bit of a glass half full approach, and I think a lot of elements of it are brilliant in a way that you get to see games that we'll never really see all that often. For example, Ulsan and Dortmund, a Korean league team and a German team, or Dortmund playing Fluminense, for example. It's the same concept. It's not exactly a common game to see. And actually, probably my favorite moment so far has been, the fact that it's in America and there's such a huge immigrant population for a lot of countries there. They've got to see their own home clubs. Maybe mightn't be as common for Dortmund because they're kind of a well-known club around the world and highly supported, but Fluminense brought incredible atmosphere to the Dortmund game, and I was just blown away by that. And it's great that probably so many Brazilians can kind of get that taste of home. The same for Mamelodi Sundowns, probably a lot of South Africans in America. And I thought that kind of brought a bit of, a taste of home for people that are so far from home at the same time.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. It's and I do agree exactly with what you said about these sort of fixtures that you won't ever see. It's almost like FIFA the game, when you just sort of pick random teams and you get Boca Juniors against Benfica. It's like, and also the games are being played in the daytime, so it's really jarring, but in an interesting way to see European teams play against each other in what would probably be a Champions League game at night, and they were playing in the middle of the afternoon. It's been interesting, yeah. It's been very interesting, and it's a good point that you make there about sort of people who would have expected to sort of see the Sundowns. People from Pretoria, for example, if they go and watch their team play in America, it's I suppose from that aspect, it has brought something that we probably didn't appreciate. Let's
Yeah,
just say.
exactly. Yeah, I think there's such a people travel. It's just the way of the world now. People are traveling all over the world to have improve their lives, have a better life. Earn money for family, friends, whatnot. And I just think that's a really nice touch that people can actually spend a couple of dollars and go and watch their own home team play, and it kind of gives them a sense of home and a bit of belonging again, because it's not something that's going to happen all that often.
Yeah, exactly. Well, obviously the Dortmund season that they just had, they didn't finish, fourth, I think, wasn't it? How are the performances towards the end of the season in the Bundesliga heading into this big tournament?
So I'm part of the Irish Dortmund fan club, and we have an awful lot of fans, about over 100 at least. And we probably, as a whole, kind of had mixed opinions about the season. And I'd say a lot of Dortmund fans in Germany and around the world had the same feeling. It went from I think there's always high expectations when you're kind of, on paper, at least the second biggest team or club in Germany. But that petered out pretty quickly under Nuri Sahin, and then he eventually got the chop. And when Niko Kovac came in, I think a lot of people actually thought it was quite an underwhelming appointment, but he really steadied the ship. And as a friend on our Bully League News show said, they just started playing simple football and ended the season really strong. I think we got 7 wins and 1 draw from the final 8 games, and that managed to just sneak us inside the top four, and crucially took a lot of pressure off our expectations for the Club World Cup.
Yeah. Well, it sounds a bit daft for me to ask this next question because obviously, like you said, Dortmund are a huge club. But for people who perhaps don't watch European football quite as much as they watch the K League, like someone like myself, who would you say are the key players for Dortmund heading into this Ulsan match?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that Siri Guirassy is probably the standout name. 21 Bundesliga goals this season. Joint second top goal scorer behind yours truly, Harry Kane. No surprises there. I think it's pretty much coming second is as good as it's going to get when you have a striker like that in the league. But he had a brilliant season. Not even just in a goal scoring sense, but he's also amazingly good at linking up play and bringing other players into the game, because he mightn't be the most mobile striker at times. Um, there's a few other names too I'd throw in the hat. Karim Adeyemi, he's one of these players that kind of frustrates a lot of the fans. He blows hot and cold. He can have brilliant games, then he can be totally quiet. So he'd be someone I'd watch out for, whether he comes off the bench or starts. But he had a brilliant Champions League campaign, 5 goals and 2 assists in 10 games, and he seems to really enjoy cup competitions. I don't know why. He seems to thrive there more than average league games. As for the fullbacks and wingbacks, Daniel Svensson, Julian Rierson are probably the two standout names there. A lot of the play goes through them out wide. They're well able to pick out crosses, and they're quite dynamic. They're well able to run up and down the pitch and defend too. And this might be a bit of a left of field one, but I'd probably throw Julian Brandt in there too. He didn't have a great season. I think a lot of fans are maybe fed up with him, but he finished the season strong, and that's why I think he deserves a mention. He got 2 goals and 4 assists in the last 4 games in the Bundesliga, and he actually got an assist against Sundowns as well there. So I think he maybe isn't the best all-round player at the time, but he definitely has the ability per se to show it on the pitch, and can definitely come up with big moments.
Yeah. What can we expect from Dortmund tactically? Obviously, this is a game that they still have to win or get a result to qualify for the round of 16. With Sundowns obviously only a point behind them. What can we expect from them? They're going to just go for it, or will they try and keep it tight and then wait until the second half, or what would you say?
Yeah, the pressure's on a bit, with Sundowns kind of breathing down their back. They obviously got the 3 points against them, but it doesn't exactly guide them into the next round. I think it's again reverting to my colleagues' comments about simple football and bully news. I would expect the basics, just control of possession. They probably know they have the player quality there to deliver, and really push up on Ulsan and try and pin them back into their box. A lot of the play can look quite simple at times. It could be just a matter of switching from side to side and trying to probe for holes. The flanks are often quite commonly hit as well. So, and I wouldn't be surprised if I see Sira Grassi probably dropping back in to try and let faster players in behind as well, the likes of Adeyemi, assuming he gets a start. They can exploit the space in behind too, and he has no problem becoming a provider rather than an out and out goal scorer. So that's kind of what I would generally expect from this game.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Dortmund were the favourites for the group. They obviously will, minimum is to get out of the group. That's just, a given for a club the size of Borussia Dortmund. But in terms of the competition as a whole, what are their realistic expectations? What are they really aiming for? How far can they go?
So I find this an interesting topic, because I think for a lot of big European clubs, the outright expectation is to try and win the thing. But I think Dortmund's kind of falls into this niche category of possibly a byproduct of the German game being so financially incentivized, because finishing the top four in Germany is probably more valuable than a lot of other leagues who might have, big backers, financial backers from America or wherever else, the Gulf, whatever. So I think finishing fourth has taken an awful lot of pressure off Dortmund in that scenario. I think had it not been the case, we would have really been battling hard here to try and go as far as we can and make as much money out of the tournament, because you're getting offered 2 million per win, extra bonuses for making the next rounds and so forth. So I think based on that and based on how we're playing, we should have the quality to at least make the round of 16 and probably could push for the quarterfinals. I believe that the winners or second place of this group will likely play River Plate or Inter Milan. So, I mean, they're not exactly impossible opponents to get by. I don't think Inter Milan have been lighting it up either. And River Plate will probably be in form given their kind of season is only kind of kicking off. But it's definitely achievable. No reason they probably couldn't make the quarterfinals.
Yeah. Well, finally, can I push you for a score prediction? Difficult, really. Obviously, we're all watching teams that we haven't watched before or certainly don't know too much about. But for what are you expecting from a score point perspective in this game?
Yeah, I won't be sitting on the fence in this one. I've gone 2-0 Dortmund or 2-1 Dortmund. That's my prediction. I think goals from Girassi and possibly Adeyemi. They're the two players I fancy. The only reason being is I think Ulsan are kind of playing for pride at the moment now. I don't think they can advance. But there's no harm in that either. There's no reason you can't stun a team like Dortmund, who definitely blow hot and cold at times. But I just fancy the kind of player quality, and as you say, with the pressure on and kind of desperately needing a win here to guarantee their progression, that they might just sneak over the line with a few goals maybe in the second half.
Yeah, it was quite before Ulsan's exit was confirmed. It was looking like it may be a kind of a similar situation to the 2018 World Cup, where it was Germany in the last game, and then obviously South Korea got that shock win. They still didn't go through because they needed a result elsewhere, and it didn't go in their favor. But I was thinking maybe at least if there is something on the line for them when heading into this Dortmund game. But now I think it's just all about, dare I say, just avoiding embarrassment, because for Ulsan, they probably owe their fans, or they really probably feel like they've not really put their best foot forward in this competition, so that they will feel like they have to perform in this game. But if they play too open and they get picked off on the counter, it might even be embarrassing. And the coach, he's not had the best of records in sort of international or continental competitions. With the Asian Champions League, Ulsan were really poor in that competition last year. I think they won just once out of 8. They lost almost every game. It was such a shock, and people are really starting to call or put under question the manager's future. So he may even feel as though he has to sort of show that he's got the tactical acumen to sort of at least try and match, and even just in spells in this game, be able to sort of say, listen, for 15, 20 minutes, whatever, or for a whole half, we had Dortmund, not under control, but we were able to sort of avoid getting picked off, or avoid a hammering. So interesting game because of what's at stake for Dortmund, and also for really, like you said, the pride for Ulsan and what they probably need to try and do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's every chance of it happening. I definitely wouldn't have full faith in Dortmund totally dominating Ulsan. And there's every chance that they can, you know, keep enough pressure on, keep it tight, and then chances will appear. Because without doubt, if they can hold off for the first half, there's no reason that chances might appear, and Dortmund will have to eventually push for the game as well, not knowing what's going on in the other game. So there's no reason they can't believe. And as you say, what added pressure, what greater motivation do you need if you need to prove yourself against a pretty top team in Europe?
Yeah. Obviously for clubs like Dortmund, these, European teams that are basically in a point of the year where they should be off. The players should be off now. They should be, on the beach somewhere. How does this affect them for next year? Because they're going to have to come back from pre-season probably a little bit later than what they would have normally done. But then on the other hand, they've got new players like Bellingham has come in and is sort of kind of got used to his new teammates and the way of playing. What do you think? Is it going to hinder them next year, or can this be used as a way to sort of help next season?
Yeah, it's a fear for me. It's a genuine fear. I think you're right in the sense that it definitely allows players to gel and bond a bit more in a competitive environment because, as you say, most of the games you open up your season with in pre-season are kind of glorified friendlies. You might maybe ramp up to play like a Villarreal or an Aston Villa or kind of a team on a similar wavelength. But realistically, we're making, you know, nearly playing two different teams after each half and stuff, and it's just kind of giving everyone minutes in the legs. In Germany, it's quite niche when it comes to the season starting because they open up with the game in the DFB Pokal. So the first game most clubs play is in the traditional German Cup, which is always kind of throws a few surprises in there. There's always been some big upsets, especially from teams in the third and second division. So it's hard to know. And if you pick up injuries in these things, it just can really come back to bite you, I think. Like Dortmund already have a big absentee in Nico Schlotterbeck, who missed a good chunk of the season. And he's badly missed here because even though Dortmund's defence has done reasonably well, you just don't want to encounter another injury like that and leave yourself further adrift when you're starting the season. It's not really a position you want to be in. And Dortmund don't have the greatest depth per se. A lot of the players that'll be coming off the bench are the kind of younger names, Maxi Bayer, Julian Duranville. A lot of these guys are kind of 21, 22 or less and still kind of getting to grips with, I suppose, senior football and the team.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the game against Ulsan and enjoy the rest of the tournament.
Likewise, thanks a million and best luck to Ulsan. Hopefully it's a great game.
Cheers.